This week on Overtime, we talk about what it means to be renewed by your mind. We dive into this passage in 1 Corinthians as we consider a church torn apart. Let's get it. Welcome to Overtime, a weekly podcast where we do a little bit of a deep dive into Sunday morning. And I am joined here today by the incredible team at both Hope and Center City Church. So we're going to do what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks and just give you a chance to kind of introduce yourselves. Now, everyone on the couch is not new to the podcast. You've at least had one episode underneath your belt. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell the people one thing that they don't already know about you that has nothing to do with ministry. And we'll start with Justin.
Sure. Hey, my name is Justin. I'm the youth pastor here at Hope Charlotte. The one thing that people don't know about me, all of our students know this because they love to revel in this, but I'll stop short at saying I'm scared of, but I don't like things that glow in the dark.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah, so the little glowy stars that people would put on their ceilings, don't like them.
Why?
Hate them.
Gonna put them.
Do
on
they
your
scare
ceiling?
you? Like,
Can
is
you
it
tell me
like
why?
When I was a kid, that's story time, but when I was a kid, I had a set of constructs, which were kind of like Lego things, and they glow. They have some that glowed in the dark, and it just, I don't know, it creeped me out, and ever since then, it's not my thing.
That's
Gotcha.
Like it.
crazy.
Whoa. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
next. Try to top that.
Okay. My name's Michaela, and I can lick my elbow, but I will not do it on camera.
Then it's not true.
How do you lick your... How's that
Don't
even
do it, John.
possible?
Don't do it, John.
You don't have to show me. I'm just asking.
I don't know. I've always been able to do it. It's something that a lot of people can't do. So
Does that mean you're like double jointed in your arm or something?
I'm guessing.
I feel like
Okay.
if you can't show it, then it doesn't exist.
I mean, you don't have to actually lick your
Is that,
elbow,
like,
but like
bad?
show us how you get your elbow up there.
No.
Like-
I believe you. I actually feel like I've seen this.
Yes, you have seen this.
Yeah. That's. I can confirm.
Okay, we got a confirmation. I guess that's good
Yeah.
enough.
My name is Emma, and I'm the youth pastor at Center City in West Charlotte. A fun fact about me is that I was thinking while they were talking. I used to have a cat. I still have a cat. He's still alive. He's 15 years old. His name is an orange.
Yes.
That's like the most fun fact about me that like most people wouldn't know. Another fun fact is me and Michaela used to be roommates. I do like that fact as well.
Yes.
We were
Look at
roommates
that.
in college.
How'd that go?
Yes.
It was
Very
great.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, no tension.
She was there when I got engaged. She knew it the day.
Yeah, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna get proposed to." And then I helped her pick out her outfit, and then I was there the second she turned 22, and we played 22 by Taylor Swift.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Who is the dirtiest of the roommates?
Our other
I'm just
we were
kidding.
like-
I'm just
we were in
kidding. We don't have to
different
go.
Our other roommate.
We don't
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even gonna hit that one, but
She's
yes.
probably
We
watching
had a
now.
lot of
You want to call her
trauma.
out?
We lived across the halls from each
Yeah.
other.
Oh, okay.
But she was there when I got engaged. I was there when she got engaged. It's great times.
That's awesome.
yes,
That's awesome. Well, we're excited. There's so much happening here at both Center City and Hope Church as we kind of bring these churches together to be one church with two expressions. And this Sunday, we actually made a couple things happen this Sunday. First of all, it was the first Sunday where one communicator did all three services. So I jumped in the car, I was driving around a little bit. That was incredibly fun.
was
Did
it
you
fun?
drive or did
It really
Jess
was.
drive?
No, I actually drove. I was by myself this week.
Yeah, I saw him pull up.
Just hung around at Hope a little bit, and so we wanted to kind of hang out in the lobbies and stuff since I wasn't going to be able to. It was fun. It was nerve-wracking, but I say that all to say the teams did phenomenal, and both locations kind of holding it down. I would walk out of my car, and everything was kind of moving and shaking, and it was just a little strange, but I really did enjoy it. But so that was kind of our first week doing that. But also, we got a chance to announce Sunday in the Park. So I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about Sunday in the Park. I know you guys have never done it, but we have. We do it almost every year, and we've done it for the last several years.
Yeah, this is like our third year.
Yeah, I think it's our third year at this point. Third year that we've been doing something like this. So basically what we do is we take a Sunday in the year, usually right around that the beginning of fall, end of summer season, and we do a Sunday in the park. And it's
Right.
exactly what it sounds like. We
Absolutely.
basically shut down the buildings and go to a local park. And this year, we're really excited because it's the first time both of these churches are kind of coming together and getting the chance to hang out. We'll do worship. There'll be food. There'll be a lot of fun for kids. It'll be fun for everybody, but specifically, we'll have some things for the kids. It's going to be a great time. So if you're interested, you can find more information out on the website. I'm sure we'll post some stuff around, but I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is.
You've been there before.
Yeah.
So like, what would you say we have to look forward to?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I always love like cookout food. So we always have like really good food. It's always fun to see people, I think specifically because we've always had like 2 services. So it's always fun for like the 9 o'clock people to see the 11:30 people. Now it's really going to be fun for the Center City people to meet the Hope people and that kind of like intermingling. The games are always fun. I'm excited because we will have youth games this year. So that is something new. Last year was fun because we had misters and I was like 30 something weeks pregnant. So that is like my memories, and iced coffee. We do have iced coffee at Sunday in the Park, which is always a nice treat.
That's one of the things about these churches that you can kind of sense God was always in it. Both these churches are pretty much coffee snobs. So the coffee is usually higher quality.
Yeah, what does
than
it
your
say
normal.
about us that I'm like looking forward to the iced coffee at Sunday in the Park?
I'm actually the weird one who doesn't like the coffee, but when you talk about food, I'm in.
Are you a
So-
Mountain Dew guy?
Well, I'm a soda. I'll go with soda
He
in
likes
general.
Coke Zero.
But
Oh yeah.
but anytime we got food and fellowship and hanging out, like I'm game. That's what I'm most excited about, is just hanging out with everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to
Yeah,
be a lot of fun.
I'm excited.
So this week we began our first series together, and we're taking a look out of the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul's writing to the church in Corinth in the series called Torn Apart. So I thought at this point I would kind of give the floor to Emma to kind of navigate some of these questions and see where we go.
Yes, I'm very excited. I think it would be helpful to like everybody kind of like where this came out of your heart, and what really why this series, why the book of 1 Corinthians and all of that. I think is kind of where I want to head first, is kind of the why behind it.
Yeah, so there's not like a really super spiritual answer to this. Every summer we tend to pick a book and kind of journey through. And so much of the time that book is a product of some of my personal study and just different places that I've been. And at the beginning of the year, started navigating through the book of 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians kind of together. And so when it was time to consider what we're doing over the summer, so many of the themes that are found in 1 Corinthians kind of lend to where not just we are as a church, but also to where I feel like the church is universally, specifically in the city of Charlotte. And there's so many different parallels that excited me about like, hey, we can step into this and find some really practical wisdom for where we're living.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this question would be really for all of us. One of the things that you really touched on this Sunday was this theme of Rockstar Leadership and following different people in different sects. And I kind of want to talk about where we see the dangers in that, and where we see that kind of come up even now in 2024, where we see different sects saying, I follow this person, I follow this person, and really what that's doing to us that we don't really see.
Yeah, I think where we see it, I think there was a season, and for those of us who are a little bit older on these couches, Justin,
Yes.
we remember kind of the rock star pastor season. I would venture to say that we're probably moving out of that to some degree. And what I mean by that is local churches that are run by these charismatic leaders that draw a following, which again, in a lot of Paul's writings, we tend to put the blame on the actual leader. Paul's quick to be like, wait a second. It's you who've chosen to follow after Apollos, and it's you who've chosen to follow after Peter. But I would say in the 2000s, there was just this trend to, you had to be hip, charismatic leader in order to draw a crowd. I think, at least I believe, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. I have a sense like we're moving out of that season. And more people are becoming a little skeptical about pledging allegiance to a charismatic leader just because of some of the things that we've seen kind of develop over the last decade or so. But with that said, because of some of the technological advancements, I think some of that's just been displaced. We've went from following rock star leaders to following rock star podcasters and influencers and authors,
Sure.
and creating these divisions among each other based off of who we are listening to.
Yeah. What would you say, like what is the biggest threat to us when we're deciding to follow the follow these podcasters, follow the teachings in these books. What's the danger when people are saying, because we've even talked a little bit about this, like, well, I listen to this podcast, so this is kind of my church, or this is really my community, and they're kind of negating real community in real life and really are being community on social media and different platforms.
Yeah, I think where it gets in trouble is when it stops becoming supplemental and it starts becoming essential.
That's good.
Dom, we joke all the time because he's the healthiest person on our team, or at least the most physically fit, hitting the gym all the time. He's the man.
He does have an Instagram for that.
He does have an Instagram for that. And one of the things that we kind of I don't fully even understand is how Dom takes supplements. Like, so what I mean by that is he'll take creatine powder, and I'm just making some of these muscle milk, which we had some in the back closet. Although I don't think you like muscle milk, Dom. You like
He
muscle?
likes Coke Zero.
Those are supplements. What Dom has done phenomenally, and kind of just to give him his props, is like he has disciplined himself to eat the right stuff. If all he ate was supplements, that would not be good for his body.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's dieted on the right stuff, and the supplements have added some fuel, but in essence, the supplements are additive. They're not essential. Whereas I think sometimes within the context of our faith journey, if we're not careful, we'll live on the supplement and forget the diet of the church. Now, why that's dangerous is because the church itself is not just where we find sound teaching, we also find accountability and community.
Yeah.
If there's no accountability and community, it doesn't matter how much supplements you add. There's not discernment. There's not strength to be found. Ultimately, the picture of Jesus that's reflected when we come together in harmony is lost in the city. So I think that's some of the dangers.
What do you think the role of the youth ministry comes in that? Because you really mentioned the 2000s. And what I remember about the 2000s as a youth pastor is we had all these explosions of these ginormous youth ministries.
Yeah.
300, 400, 500 kids, video game systems everywhere, Rockstar type shows. We had the lights, we had the sound, the smoke and all that. And to me, I started looking at that going, but they're hitting college and they're going away.
Yeah.
And for me, I always sit there. To me, it always came back to they had no identity in the church.
Yeah.
They showed up to a youth group. They showed up on Wednesday nights or Sunday nights to their youth group, but they weren't part of the church.
So good, Justin.
So how do we connect all that? Because I feel like that's where a lot of the Rockstar stuff started to come from. Because you have these youth pastors who are, like you said, super charismatic. They've got these great budgets. They're doing these great things.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a place for youth ministry. I'm a huge youth ministry fan. I think sometimes what happens is when things like that happen, we tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Youth ministry is bad. Look at all these kids who are not returning to church. I've always said within the scope of good youth ministry, the objectives just need to be really clear. A couple things that were key for us. We always said, we're here to partner with parents in the discipleship of the kid. So we never took the onus and the main responsibility of discipling kids. It just felt like we can do our best. And then there are kids who come from broken homes where that discipleship's not there. And we kind of went above and beyond to surround them with good mentorship. But the ideal situation is us echoing the moral fabric of the home. Where I think we've lost it in some scopes of youth ministry is where we've separated the idea. Youth ministry became this thing in and of itself, and it separated the idea of the youth pastor's role to pastor the family.
Yeah.
I'm here to provide a Wednesday night experience for your kid. They could be doing horrible in school. I don't care about that. I'm not going to help you parent. I'm not worried about your struggles in the home. We just make sure we have a good Wednesday night, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a struggle. I think holistic discipleship in that, like, are you giving parents the right tools to help discipleship kids? Are you supplementing that, again, with good discipleship material and programming? We did this thing called Core, where every Thursday night, a group of kids would come to my house. We would have cookies, no frills. There was no smoke. Nobody's playing an acoustic guitar. We literally just sat and walked through leadership principles. So I think across the board, if there's a strong discipleship arm and a strong partnership with parents, that goes a long way. But also the objective of youth ministry has to be very clear. So what we always used to say to our adult staff is the success of youth ministry is not seen for 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
So when to this day, because the blessing of my life is I was a youth pastor, And now I've seen 15 to 20 years pass since my first youth pastorate.
Right.
And there are moments where now I walk through grocery stores and I get, hey, Pastor John, do you remember me? Let me introduce you to my kids. Let me introduce you to my husband. We go to this church. We've been active in ministry. We're really excited about what God's doing. That to me is some of the product of good ministry, youth ministry that's partnered with parents to create fully developed disciples.
Yeah.
I will also say that it's like everything else, though. Like we can have the best intentions in the world, best systems in the world. There are still those that are going to kind of navigate in those areas where they don't walk out with that type of relationship with the Lord. But really, I think that's where youth ministry sees its most fruitfulness.
Yeah.
Well-
But it's 2024. Like when I was doing youth ministry, like how has that changed to date? Do we still see such like a push to some of that Rockstar leadership, or are kids kind of saying, no, we want a little bit more authenticity?
There was a movement. There was a big
Yeah.
wave, I would say, in the past 5-ish years, Justin. I mean, really, what's cool is that, and not to say that you're old, but
I'm
we
old.
sit on
It's
two
okay.
we sit on two very opposite sides of
Yeah.
youth ministry, where you have with like, you have all my respect because you've weathered the storm.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? But like, I think, not that this needs to be a podcast on youth ministry, but like, I think with like my generation of youth pastors, we're coming in with lights and smoke and acting as if we're the first people to ever do this.
Yeah.
And there's a big thing in me to sit back and be like, no, I'm not. Like, but I do think that there was this wave at first where I did see a lot of my peers kind of tap into this Rockstar leadership because it is such a big thing. Because quite honestly, I have felt for so long that being a youth pastor was synonymous with almost wanting to be famous. I remember in Bible school, like sitting in my classes and looking around and everybody wanting, it was like we didn't make it if we weren't being asked to speak at these big conferences. And it's been like this movement within the past few years where people are saying, your kids don't want that. They want to know if you know their name and their favorite color, and they want to know if you're showing up at their soccer games. So I think it's easy for the pastor to get wrapped up in the Rockstar leadership. It's the kids that pull us back and are like, we actually don't care about that at all.
Yeah.
It's the students that are saying, we want to go deeper. It's the students that are saying, this is what we want. And it's imperative on the youth pastor to be like, I'm here to serve you, not to serve my own name, and kind of
good
thing.
stuff.
So that's really the movement that I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that in your
Yeah, I mean,
tenure.
there still are some youth pastors out there that want to be the rock stars.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with the show.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the great things. There's nothing wrong with the smoke
Yeah.
and the lights and all that. But like Emma was just saying, like, if it's not about the kids, if it's not about their growth, if it's not about their development, then us as youth pastors,
Yeah, what are we doing?
You know, and if it's not about like Pastor John said, like about the parents and help bringing them in and all growing together, then again, for me, it all goes back to the church. If we're not as a church operating as a total entity,
Yeah.
you know, it's full service. It's not, you know,
Yeah.
it's
We-
not just kids showing up.
And we also can't walk outside of what you're doing. That's one of like the thing that I have to keep in my mind is like, I'm the youth pastor, but I follow in your vision and your mission, and for our youth ministry, it's hope for the broken, purpose for everybody, and we work inside of that. I think that's another big thing is you see that Rockstar leadership coming out when youth pastors are trying to make something outside of the scope of the church.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it echoes in kids ministry too, because I've done both. I've done the big shows, and which you're right, Justin. There's nothing wrong with it, but kids are seeking such authenticity because they don't get it anywhere else in their lives today, and it means a lot whenever you show up to their school shows and you show up to their soccer games. That's right, and like. I get a lot more fruit out of my Sunday services and our small group discussion than sometimes our large group, our big show, if you will. And so I think that this generation's that is coming up, I think that they're seeking more to like have a voice and find their own voice. And that comes from those authentic conversations rather than, the smoke and the show side of things.
Which,
Love that.
which again, there's nothing wrong with creating something,
Right.
And creating a space. But I do think that there's been this movement. I think social media has really kind of pointed to that kids don't want. I don't know if you remember that there was like this graphic that was going around for a while, and a lot of youth pastors were reposting it. It was like, your students don't want the lights, the smoke, whatever. They just want you to show up. And I think, quite honestly, that's what we want as for a church collectively, right? And to kind of get us back on track here, I think that there was a little bit of that maybe that we were seeing in the Church of Corinth, is that we were trying to make it something that it was never supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be a show. It was supposed to be community. It was supposed to be me showing up for you, you showing up for me. It wasn't supposed to be, well, I follow this person, you follow that person. My person's more famous, your person's less famous, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, Paul is quick to verse 11 of chapter 1 is quick to like, hey, here's what I've heard, and is concerned about it because it is drawing some fractures within the context of the early church. And those fractures are threatening to tear the church apart. So he's quick to be like, and I love his response. He's basically, was Christ fractured? Was his first question. There's no division in the heart of Christ. Like he came, the purpose was unified. He had a reason. There's a purpose. There's a direction. There was never division in his heart. He knew exactly what he came to do. And then the second thing he says is, was Paul crucified for you?
Yeah.
And again, why I love the way that Paul writes this is he's quick. I think some of us would have embraced the fame. Paul does the exact opposite. It's like, no, I wasn't crucified for you. I didn't baptize you in my name. And I think he even kind of levels out some of his humanity in that moment. Like, I mean, I could have baptized you in my name, but if I did, I'm not sure I would have baptized you guys. Like, there's almost this sense, like he's putting them on blast. Like, it's his mercy and his grace that's brought you to this point. I'm just he goes on to say, I'm just a messenger in chains. Mm-hmm. But even to the point of how he kind of communicates this, like this is a detriment to our church. And if we're not careful, it will tear us up from the inside out. And again, I think the same is true today. If we're not careful, some of these things that should be supplement become essential. And we find ourselves as followers of people versus followers of the one true living God.
Yeah. So practically, what do we do when we see ourselves in that space where I'm following this influencer, I'm following this speaker, I've bought all the books, I've subscribed to all the things. What do I do now? Where do I go from here?
Yeah, I'm a believer in systems and rhythms. Like that's just a big part of how I'm wired. If you find yourself in a position where you are being influenced more by these supplements rather than the essentials, I would say stop taking the supplements. Like there are seasons where the phrase that we use that's modern today is detox. Like you would take a detox from some of that. And I think that's fine. I would also say that I would not stop one thing without starting another. And one of those things that I would be quick to is to evaluate my engagement to the local body. I know this sounds like a plug for Hope or Center City or what will be Hope City Church. But really it's a plug for the local church. It's what is left. What Jesus leaves besides the Holy Spirit is this incredible institution of the church as the hope of the world. And then turns around and says, no, perfect harmony is found when we live in community together. And ultimately what the world sees is a perfect picture of Jesus reflected in that community. Without that community, the perfect picture of Jesus is not seen. So we not only need each other, but ultimately, in order for the church to be the church, it needs people. So I would say to step deeper from a practical sense, figure out, are you just showing up on Sunday? What does your engagement in ministry look like? Have you spent time recognizing what your spiritual gifts are? Yeah. How are you utilizing those spiritual gifts in the city within the context of your sphere of influence and even in your local church? So I think those questions can be asked to help draw us away. And again, I'm not against supplements, but there's just got to be the right diet before the supplements are added back.
Yeah. Oof, I remember sitting on Sunday and I don't know if you saw me, but I leaned in. I was like, this is good. This is good. I was thinking about it all morning. But one of the things that you ended on yesterday, and you kind of touched on a little bit, this idea of detox, this idea of kind of silencing some things. And I know at Center City, you had us all stand and pray a certain prayer over our mind, over our heart, over our mind, over our lips, and over our heart. And I was thinking about those things this morning. I was thinking about somebody who would have prayed those prayers, Lord, over my thought life, over my tongue, over my heart. And really, I'm a practical person. So I'm thinking about somebody who prayed, Lord, protect my thoughts and all of these things. What now on Monday morning after they prayed that prayer on Sunday, what does that look like for us to do? And this is a question for you, but really this is a question for everybody, what that looks like.
Yeah, well, I think that if you're using that term supplements. If you're using the supplements more than you're getting into your Bible and really seeking the Lord, even if you're just reading the Bible, I honestly think that everyone has such, you have an underlying bias from how you communicate the gospel. So no matter if you're listening to podcasts on the Bible or, different kind of topics that are related to Christianity, you still aren't knowing the one true voice that you need to be listening to. And I'd rather have you reading your Bible to listen and be able to discern what's the Lord's voice in your life versus your own.
Love that.
Than hear different opinions, because how are you supposed to know what opinions to believe,
Oof.
And so,
That's a good one,
good.
Mika.
You got to oof.
Yeah, you did.
Oof. Yeah.
So there are certain books that come around in certain seasons that just kind of force me to reconsider some things. And Digital Liturgies has been one of those books recently. If you've been watching the podcast, I think I've mentioned it every other week. But it actually came out in this message just because so much of our thinking has been rewired based off of our technological advancements over the last 20 years. I didn't get too much time to go into it this Sunday, but I guess that's kind of what the podcast is for. But in the book, he mentions how technology has shaped us, and good or bad, we just don't even really pay attention to it. Like, we don't notice. His example was like air conditioning. Like, before air conditioning, people would gather around the one fireplace that they had in the house. So the idea that a 15-year-old could run into their room, slam the door, and say, respect my privacy, wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Because at 15, if you wanted to stay warm, you had to actually be around the fireplace. There was not like, there wasn't like every room was air conditioned. He also talks about cars and how going across town used to be as complicated as hitching a wagon, making sure that everything you need for the day was in the wagon, making sure the horses were ready and fed, and then you're moving across town. Whereas jumping in the car 2 seconds before you're actually supposed to be there and turning the ignition on has transformed the way that we travel even.
Right.
So when he talks about technology, he's not talking about content, although we have to be concerned with content. He's like, well, the way that technology has rewired us, it really has created some things in us that we have to be aware of. Short attention spans is an issue. Like the absolute uptick in ADHD, the absolute uptick in mental health conditions like anxiety, all of the secondary kind of things that have developed, like there's been a whole industry kind of surrounded by, and a lot of that would attribute to over the last 20 years, we have retrained our minds that they're not able to put good amount of time in silence and stillness and in focus. Why? Because I pop up a computer and everything is quick.
It's the instant gratification.
Yeah. So our minds have been rewired in a lot of ways. So when we're being told that we are being transformed and renewed by our mind, and yet we're living in a day and age where we can't control our thought process, I would argue that that's why transformation seems so difficult and so out of reach. One of the passages in scripture that always gets me, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Many times when I talk to people, they're weak. Like they're struggling through weaknesses. They feel weak physically. They feel weak emotionally. They feel weak spiritually. But when you break it down, it's because they don't have the discipline necessary to wait. We just don't wait. So I've been picking up picking up a old habit. So for a season, I would sit for 15 minutes in silence. I was challenged by a pastor to do this. I was like, what do you do for the 15 minutes? He's like, nothing. I was like, okay, so just break that down. How do you do nothing for 15 minutes? He's like, you don't do nothing. And his thought was, in those 15 minutes, my thought is, I'm just going to wait on the Lord. And if he speaks, amen. If he doesn't speak, that's not the objective is I'm not even trying to this isn't my prayer time. I'm just sitting in this place of waiting in order to exercise that thing of wait. And I know that admittedly I say that, and there's a whole sloth of people who said, well, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, or I've been diagnosed with bipolar issue. So that's something that I struggle with. And I'm not saying that those diagnoses are bad or anything of that nature. I'm not saying that that's the end all. But I do think that if we're transformed by the renewing of our mind, that the Spirit of God can help us if we commit to the exercise of learning how to be still, to repurpose that process of thinking and grabbing a hold of thoughts and capturing thoughts and laying them at the feet of Jesus, that we could be transformed.
Yeah. I even think to that, like, just because that we do have these things, I think we live in a day and age where we have a lot of anxiety, we have ADHD, we have distraction, like there's everything. I still think that our physical ailments and physical things that we deal with do not hinder the voice of God working in our lives, or like the power of him working in our lives. So while you were talking about this yesterday, I was thinking, like, if anybody is thinking about how do I do this or when do I do this, I thought, like, what a perfect time to really start implementing these rhythms into our life of silence, of this, like, I was even thinking, like, if to go so far as like people need to do social media detoxes, or like just if you find yourself in one of those places where you're constantly like touching your phone and trying to grab for it, the summer is the best place to do that.
Yeah.
Summer is like a reset button on that.
I would challenge, I know, so this is whatever I think when I do, when I hear social media detox, I am not a social media inputter. I'm not. Like, if you're looking to find out what's going on in my life, you probably either need to call me or email me or something. It's not like you're going to find the occasional sermon clip that Dom sends or post that Emma tells me to put up there.
That's true.
But I'm a consumer of social media. I'm not an inputter of social media. So I hear like the idea of detox and I'm like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. But yet I have found myself in seasons where I can sit down and scroll and spend an hour.
Yeah.
And where it gets challenging is I'm finding there's been seasons of life where I found myself saying things like, I just need an hour to detox, or I need an hour to rest. And what I'm saying is I need an hour to scroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That becomes a little dangerous. How do you guys navigate that tension?
So, for me personally, Justin knows this. I have this app called Opal, and I found myself scrolling all of the time on my phone, and to the point where it was like 5-6 hours a day. It like tracked it, and now I have a time limit like on it to where I'm only allowed on social media from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. So if I'm up with the babies in the middle of the night, and then I could take breaks now, like throughout the day. But every time you go to reach for it, it increases your waiting time. So you don't have that instant gratification. And so it's retrained my brain to not instantly reach for Facebook, not instantly reach for Instagram. And honestly, like my husband, John Wayne, he's like, I see such a difference in you, because you used to be able to like not function without scrolling, and like, to no one's fault but my own. But like now you can finish sentences. You just seem a lot more clear-minded. And that's something practical that I've used.
Awesome.
That has been
That's
amazing.
really good.
That's awesome. What about you guys?
I'm very similar to you in that, like, I'm a consumer, not a creator when it comes to social media. And I think very often what you said a moment ago is exactly how I feel. Like a lot of times I'm just like, I just need a break from everything.
Yeah.
And what I really want is just to hide away for a minute and scroll through TikTok for an hour, and fortunately with 3 kids and all kinds of craziness at my house, I often don't get a lot of those moments to myself. So that kind of helps. But there are moments when I'm like, okay, I need to put this down and go do something else. If I say I need a break, I need to find a different break than this.
Yeah, that's good.
That is good. I'm different than I think everybody on the couches, where I am both. I am both a consumer and I don't know the word you used, but I like to post on social media. I think it's fun. I have, and John has known me long enough to know I have always kind of struggled with like how much is too much. I have been off social media for a year before. I have deleted the app. I have gone as far as deleting my account and have to make new accounts. One of the things that I kind of sit in the tension of is with youth ministry is that if I'm not on social media, have you ever tried to get a 15-year-old to call you back? They don't call you back, but they will like the reel you send them on Instagram. And so it is a little sometimes impossible not to be on social media as a youth pastor, just because if I don't know what they're doing, if I don't see like their Finstas and their funny pictures. Like I had a whole conversation with a student this morning just based off of her Instagram dump and just what she did. And she wouldn't have told me that had I not seen it. And so I kind of navigate that tension sometimes. One of the things that I am trying to do is like put my phone to bed. Joey's in the back. He's probably laughing at me because I've had a whole conversation this morning about how I'm still not great at it. But I make myself choose. I have deleted TikTok so I can have Instagram, so I don't have both. That is one of the things, is I realized I was just switching back between the two. So I no longer have TikTok. I just have Instagram. And if I delete Instagram, I'll go get TikTok. But it is dangerous for me to have both on my phone at once because I will scroll forever. But it's
I think in the rare exceptions where like you're a social media director or a youth pastor who has to navigate communication, I think one of the things that I've been trying to tell people, and it helps me navigate it, is it can't be real. Like the moment it becomes real and essential, I think that's where, again, it moves from supplement to essential. And it's why it's so funny. I was talking to someone the other day and they said that they sent me, they're like, yeah, I tried to message you 2 years ago and you didn't respond. You ghosted me. And I'm like, oh, that's messed up, man. I can't believe I did that. Show me the text. He's like, oh, no, it was on text. It was Facebook. I was like, yeah, Facebook's not real.
Yeah.
He was like, what? I was like, yeah, that's just a way that like, there are seasons where I think we need to reevaluate. And if there's something that you need, like I need this, I think that's where it becomes challenging, specifically because so many times what we do in that numbing is what we're numbing is our need for the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Like, I need peace. This has been a crazy day. It's been a hectic day. I need peace. But instead of seeking the Spirit of God that is the Prince of Peace, I'm going to numb that need for peace by sitting on my couch and scrolling through TikTok or Facebook. Now, again, not that these things are inherently evil in and of themselves, but I do want us to consider that they're rewiring the way that we think and process.
And one of the biggest things that stirred me to be like, I need to not be on my phone anymore. I was like sitting on my recliner at home and I was just scrolling through it and I'm like, how bored am I going to be in heaven? Like, there's no reels in heaven. Like, what am I going to do with my free time? And like, obviously I'm not going to be bored in heaven, but it's like, to think that way, and it's like, oh wait, this isn't going to be here. How finite is this?
It's very finite.
It's like, oh, okay, I need to rewire the way I think.
I love that.
Yeah. Or even practically, like I saw a study, I feel like everybody's probably seen this, where it talked about like we just want to get to, after a busy day, we sit down and we're like scrolling. We're like, I just need me time. I just need to get time back for me. So like we push our bedtime back and back and back, and we don't realize that like this me time that we think we're getting is actually stealing time for us. And I think about how I forget what character in the Bible it is that is like just so angry and so frustrated, and the Lord just like tells him to take a nap.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that. Like yesterday after church, I laid down and I was like, I could be on my phone, but I was like, but Emma, what you really need is a nap. Like a nap would do so much more for you. And so if you replace your scrolling time with a nap time, you might be a better person.
Well, I will say,
might be happier.
From a very, to your point, it has affected our sleep schedule. And I would argue that there is something to be said. I can't tell you, like if you're struggling with pornography or you're struggling with addiction, like one of the first things they tell you is to what's your sleep rhythm look like? Because you're not going to have the strength necessary to resist some of those urges if you're constantly up till 3 o'clock in the morning with 2 hours of sleep a day. That doesn't help.
Yeah, it's the old Snickers commercial. I mean, it is true. When you are hungry, when you are tired,
you when you're
going to
hungry,
be more susceptible to whatever it is.
Yeah,
Right.
For sure. Yeah. So that was the thought. Like, he talks about how Paul in 1 Corinthians talks about how we are united in thought. But what I was challenged by is if we can't control our thinking, there's no way that we can choose to be united in this thought.
Yeah. It's so good. Oh gosh. So can you tell us where are we headed? We're headed on next Sunday.
The philosophers and scholars, Paul introduces this idea of the wisdom of the world versus the wisdom of God, and how the phrase he uses is he calls one wise and one foolish, and then he just kind of throws it on its head. Like, yeah, it's foolishness to them, but Jesus has become all wisdom, which I absolutely love. So I am really getting excited about the wisdom of the cross and what that means. And then he turns around and he's quick to be like, here's the wisdom of the cross. By the way that the wisdom of the cross is experienced in the life of people is through this thing called preaching. So I'm excited about all that. Can't wait.
Cool.
I can't wait.
Yeah. If you happen to be in the Charlotte area, you want to come by, we will be at both Hope Church and Center City Church this Sunday, 9 o'clock, 10:15, 11:30. We would love to see you there. If you have any questions, you can go to either one of those websites and we would love to hang out. If not, we'll see you next week right here on Overtime.